most people think that capitalism and competition are synonyms. I believe they are antonyms. A capitalist is someone who accumulates capital. A world of competition is a world where all the profits are competed away. And so if you're an entrepreneur or a founder, you always want to be building a monopoly. You do not want to be doing something where you're in cutthroat, ferocious competition. A restaurant is a terrible business to go into. It's super competitive and extremely non-capitalistic. People never make money opening restaurants. And I sort of give Google as the example of a company at the other end of the spectrum where you have enormous profits and you've had no sort of serious competition in 12 years, ever since they definitively distanced themselves from Yahoo and Microsoft back in 2002. And I think one of the things that these breakthrough 0 to 1 companies have is that they do things where when you do something new, you are in this sort of happy place where you're not sort of directly competing with too many people, and then you have a product that you are offering the world that does not yet exist, and that's what makes these franchises so extremely valuable. I think this question of competition and monopoly, there's sort of many different reasons. It's sort of, I think, very underappreciated. Sort of there's always this nuance where the people who have monopolies generally don't talk about it, and the people who are in perfect competition pretend that they have something special. So if you're running Google, your talking points are, we're not a search company, but we're a technology company, and we're competing ferociously with Apple on the phone and with Facebook on social and Microsoft on Office, and we're building cars and we're competing with the car companies, and there's just like competition everywhere, and we're not the monopoly the government is looking for. And then if you were, say, trying to open a restaurant in London, you would say, you're trying to get investors to invest in your restaurant. You will say something like, well, this is a completely, and then the investors will say, well, I don't want to invest in a restaurant. It's a bad business. It'll lose money. And you'll say, no, this is a completely different restaurant. It's one of a kind. It's the only French Nepalese fusion cuisine in London, in like South Paddington or wherever, in some small area of London, and so you will again artificially define what you're doing in a way that's very different. And so I think this question always gets obscured by the people inside these businesses, and that's why it's this very important idea that's much bigger than we think it is. But I think it's also, we also get trapped in competitive cycles for sort of a psychological reason. It's often, we often find it reassuring to be in crowds, to do things that lots of other people are doing. The word ape already in the time of Shakespeare meant both primate and to imitate, and there's something about human nature that's disturbingly lemming-like, sheep-like, ape-like, herd-like, and this is always a dangerous sort of behavior pattern when you're starting a business, because when you're in a crowd, it's the crowd of people you're competing against. And I've been a sort of very big critic of the higher education system, because I think that sort of encapsulates this ideology of competition in its purest form, where you have to compete on all these sort of tests and jumping through all these hoops. You get to the same sort of short list of elite universities in the U.S., then you go into the same short list of elite jobs, and a lot of it gets driven by people not really asking what are they doing, why is it important, but when you're focused on competition, you're always focused on beating the person next to you, and you do get better at the thing you're competing on. Like if you're in a high school swimming team, you'll swim a little bit faster than you otherwise would have swum. But you often lose sight of what's truly important and truly valuable. And there's sort of this autobiographical part of this book where, if I had to give advice to my younger self, I was hyper-tracked. I was in 8th grade, junior high school. One of my friends wrote in my yearbook that I would surely get into Stanford in 4 or 5 years' time, and that's what happened. And then I went to Stanford Law School, and then I sort of got tracked into sort of a big law firm in Manhattan, where from the outside everybody was trying to get in, on the inside everybody was trying to leave, after I left after 7 months and 3 days, one of the one of the people down the hall from me told me it was very reassuring to see me leave. He had no idea that it was possible to escape from Alcatraz, which was, of course, all you had to do was go out the front door. But it was again, so much of people's identity was wrapped up in winning these various competitive dynamics that they could not think about this. So if I give advice to my younger self, it would be to, really think hard. Why was I doing these things? Was I engaged in? Was I doing these things because I genuinely wanted to do them, or was it simply a sort of a prestige status game that I was playing? And I think if I was honest, that there was way more of that going on, and there's, I think, a lot of that going on with a lot of us that we should always think hard about doing less of.